The year was 2145. Alien ambassadors stepped onto a human ship for the first time. But the air felt heavy with a fear they couldn't explain. That in the deep shadows of the hallway, something was watching them. Two glowing yellow eyes, cold and unblinking, stared from the darkness. Suddenly, the alien scanner began to scream. A warning flashed in red. Class S Predator. The alien guards panicked. They raised their plasma rifles, expecting a giant monster to jump out and shred them to pieces. Detected. Lethal force advised, but then, a human commander walked in. He wasn't running. He wasn't screaming. He was smiling and holding a cup of coffee. He picked up the killing machine and kissed its head. "Oh, you found Mittens," he said. The aliens couldn't believe their eyes. The year was 2145, and the Galactic Union was finally meeting the humans. Ambassador Krell, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms, stepped onto the human spaceship called the Explorer. Behind him stood 3 elite guards, their hands shaking slightly on their plasma rifles. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were a mystery. They were new, they were loud, and they were strange. But today, the aliens were about to discover something that would terrify them more than any human weapon. The air inside the ship was cool, and the lights were dimmed to save power. As the alien group walked down a long, metallic hallway, the silence was heavy. Suddenly, Ambassador Krell stopped. His large, sensitive ears twitched. He heard a sound, a very faint, rhythmic clicking on the metal floor. It was the sound of something walking, but it was too light to be a human. Krell looked toward the end of the dark hallway. There, in the deep shadows, he saw them, 2 glowing, yellow orbs. They were eyes. They did not blink. They stayed perfectly still, staring at the ambassadors from the darkness. Krell felt a chill run down his spine. In his world, eyes like those belonged to the monsters that lived in the deep jungles, creatures that hunted in the night and never left survivors. Krell slowly reached for his scanning device. His fingers trembled as he pointed the small machine toward the shadows. The screen flickered to life, and then it happened. The device began to beep rapidly, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the quiet hall. A bright red warning flashed on the screen in the galactic language: Class S Predator detected. Lethal force advised. Evacuate immediately. The guards immediately raised their weapons, their eyes wide with fear. They had never seen a Class S rating on a biological life form before. Usually, that rating was reserved for giant sea monsters or ancient dragons. The creature in the shadows began to move. It didn't walk like a normal animal, it flowed like liquid. It moved silently, without a single sound from its feet. It stepped into a small patch of light, and the aliens gasped. It was small, covered in soft fur, with pointed ears and long, sharp whiskers. But its eyes were the most terrifying part. They were the eyes of a professional killer, focused and cold. The creature crouched low to the ground, its back arching, and its long tail began to twitch back and forth like a snake. To the aliens, this was a clear sign of an incoming attack. They prepared to fire, thinking this biological weapon had escaped its cage to kill them. Just as the guards were about to pull their triggers, a door opened nearby. Heavy footsteps echoed as Commander Miller, a tall and muscular human, walked into the hallway. He was holding a cup of coffee and looking at some papers. He didn't seem to notice the guns or the panic. He looked down and saw the creature. The aliens held their breath, expecting the human to scream or run for his life. Instead, the commander's face transformed. His tough, serious expression melted into a huge, silly smile. He put his coffee down and bent over, reaching his hand out toward the deadly predator. "Oh. There you are, Mittens," the commander said in a high-pitched, happy voice. To the alien's absolute horror, the human didn't just touch the beast, he picked it up. He tucked the Class S Predator under his arm like a bag of groceries. The creature let out a low, vibrating sound. The alien scanner went crazy again, flashing a new warning: high-frequency vibration detected. Weaponized sonic attack in progress. Krell screamed, "Commander, get back. That beast is trying to liquefy your internal organs with its sonic vibrations." Commander Miller stopped and looked at the aliens, looking very confused. He looked at the cat, then back at the ambassadors. He started laughing, a deep, loud human laugh. He took the cat and held it right up to his face, rubbing his nose against its fur. The cat responded by licking the commander's cheek with a tongue that the aliens knew was covered in tiny, meat-stripping hooks. "This?" Miller asked, pointing at the cat. "This is just Mittens. She's my cat. She was just purring because she's happy to see me. Isn't she the cutest little thing in the galaxy?" The alien ambassadors stood frozen. Their hearts were racing, and their scanners were still screaming, "Danger." They looked at the commander, who was now kissing the top of the predator's head. The cat looked at the aliens and let out a small, soft, meow. To the humans, it was a cute sound. To the aliens, it sounded like a battle cry. They realized something terrifying: humans didn't just live in a universe full of monsters. They invited the monsters into their homes. They fed them, they played with them, and they let them sleep in their beds. Ambassador Krell turned off his scanner with a shaky hand. He realized that the peace treaty they were about to sign was more important than he ever imagined. If humans were brave enough, or crazy enough, to keep silent death as a household pet, what else were they capable of? The mystery of the humans had just become a lot more frightening. Why would a species choose to live with a killing machine? And more importantly, if this was what they kept for fun, what did they keep for war? After the strange meeting in the hallway, the alien ambassadors retreated to their private quarters. They were safe behind thick titanium doors, but they did not feel safe at all. Ambassador Krell sat at a large holographic table, his four hands shaking as he pulled up the data recorded by his hidden sensors. The other aliens gathered around him, their eyes fixed on the glowing blue screens. They needed to understand what that creature, the cat, really was. They couldn't believe the human commanders claimed that it was just a sweet pet. To the Galactic Union, there was no such thing as a sweet predator. Everything in the universe had a purpose, and looking at the data, this creature's purpose was clearly cold-blooded murder. The first thing they analyzed was the cat's physical weapons. Krell zoomed in on a video clip of the cat sharpening its claws on a wooden post. The aliens gasped in horror. They watched as long, curved blades emerged from the cat's paws. These were not permanent nails, they were retractable daggers hidden inside the skin. The scanner revealed that these claws were made of a specialized protein that was sharper than most alien combat knives. "Look at the design," one of the alien scientists whispered. "The blades stay hidden to keep them sharp and silent. It only shows its weapons a second before the kill. This is a design for an assassin, not a companion." They realized that the humans were walking around with a creature that carried 10 hidden knives at all times. Next, they looked at the cat's eyes. The holographic display showed a close-up of Mittens' pupils. In the bright light of the ship, the pupils were thin vertical slits, but in the dark, they expanded into giant black circles. Krell explained to his team that the cat's eyes were designed to capture every single photon of light. This creature could see in what humans called total darkness. To the aliens, who needed bright lights to see clearly, this was a nightmare. They realized that if the power ever went out on the ship, the humans would be blind, but the cat would become a ghost. It would move through the shadows, seeing everyone while being completely invisible itself. They began to wonder if the humans kept the cat not as a pet, but as a secret security system to hunt down anyone who moved in the dark. The suspense grew as they analyzed the cat's movements. They watched a video of the cat jumping from a high shelf, at least 3 times its own height. The aliens expected the creature to crash or break a bone, but it landed in complete silence. The sensors showed that the cat's skeleton was not rigid like theirs, it was flexible, almost like a spring. Its collarbone wasn't even attached to the rest of its skeleton, allowing it to squeeze through tiny gaps. "It has no collarbone," Krell shouted, his voice cracking with fear. That means it can enter any vent. It can crawl through the pipes and come out inside our sleeping pods. The realization hit them like a physical blow. There was no place on the ship where they could The most terrifying part of the night came when they watched a live feed from the human commander's bedroom. They saw the commander lying in bed, completely vulnerable and fast asleep. The cat, the Class S predator, jumped onto the bed. It walked slowly across the commander's chest, its heavy paws pressing down on his heart. The aliens held their breath, waiting for the cat to bite the human's throat or use its daggers. The cat leaned down, its face inches away from the commander's neck. The aliens were ready to call for help. But then, the cat simply curled up into a ball and went to sleep. The ambassadors sat in total silence for a long time. They couldn't understand it. Why would a predator with night vision, retractable daggers, and self-healing abilities choose to sleep on a human instead of eating him? Krell looked at his team, his face pale. The humans are not just keeping these creatures, he said quietly. The humans have somehow convinced these monsters to protect them. Think about it. If a human has a sweet relationship with a killing machine like this, imagine how they would treat an enemy. The aliens realized that the cat was a warning. It was a message from the humans to the rest of the galaxy. We have tamed the darkness, and we keep it in our homes. As the night went on, the aliens couldn't sleep. Every small noise in the vents made them jump. Every shadow in the corner looked like a pair of glowing yellow eyes. They began to realize that the Galactic Union had made a big mistake. They had thought humans were weak because they were friendly. But now they knew the truth. Humans were the only species in the universe crazy enough to share their pillows with a predator that could kill them in their sleep. This made humans the most unpredictable and dangerous race they had ever met. The mission had changed from a simple visit to a survival test. They had to stay on the ship for 4 more days, and Mittens was still out there, somewhere in the dark, watching them. The next morning, the alien ambassadors decided they needed to see how the humans controlled this creature. They gathered in the observation gallery, looking down into the ship's large recreation room through a thick, reinforced glass window. They saw Commander Miller standing in the center of the room, holding a small, silver cylinder in his hand. The cat, Mittens, was sitting a few feet away, looking bored. The aliens turned on their high-speed cameras and sensory recorders. They were convinced that the human was about to perform a dangerous training ritual. They expected to see whips, loud commands, or perhaps even electric shocks to keep the predator in line. What they saw instead was far more confusing and terrifying to their logical minds. Commander Miller pressed a button on the silver cylinder. Suddenly, a tiny, bright red dot appeared on the floor. To the aliens, this looked exactly like a high-precision laser targeting system used by elite snipers. Their alarms didn't go off, but their instincts did. "He is marking a target," Krell whispered, leaning closer to the glass. The moment the red dot touched the ground, the cat changed instantly. It was no longer a sweet pet. Its body dropped low, its fur flattened, and its eyes became giant black holes of pure focus. Then, Mittens did something the aliens had never seen. She performed the predator wiggle. Her back legs moved rapidly, building up kinetic energy like a coiled spring. The aliens watched their screens as the cat's internal temperature rose. She was preparing for a lethal strike. In a flash of movement so fast that the alien cameras struggled to capture it, Mittens launched herself across the room. She didn't run, she flew. She was a blur of orange fur, her paws striking the floor with lightning speed as she tried to kill the red dot. To the aliens, this was a display of peak physical evolution. The cat was moving at speeds that would allow it to dodge bullets. Every time Miller moved his thumb, the red dot jumped to a wall or a chair, and the cat followed, jumping 6 feet into the air and performing mid-air flips. The ambassadors were horrified. They realized that if a human ever pointed a laser at an alien, this monster would be on them before they could even blink. The toy was actually a training exercise for a high-speed assassin. After a few minutes of this intense, combat training, the human turned off the laser. The cat stopped instantly, breathing heavily, its chest heaving. Commander Miller laughed and walked over to the predator. This was the moment the aliens had been waiting for. They knew that in nature, after a hunt, a predator is full of adrenaline and highly aggressive. They expected Miller to keep his distance. Instead, the human reached down to rub the cat's stomach, the most sensitive and protected part of any animal's body. The aliens gasped. "He is touching the kill zone," one of the guards shouted. Suddenly, it happened. Mittens' instincts were still high. She wrapped her front paws around Miller's arm, her claws digging in, and she bit down hard on his hand. The alien guards immediately raised their rifles, ready to break the glass and save the human. They saw bright red blood appear on Miller's skin. In the Galactic Union, drawing blood was a sign of a fight to the death. They waited for Miller to scream, to punch the animal, or to draw his weapon. But he did none of those things. Commander Miller simply sighed, looked at his bleeding hand, and said in a calm, slightly annoyed voice, "Ouch. Mittens, stop it. No more playtime if you're going to be a brat." He gently unhooked her claws from his skin and patted her head. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He looked like a parent dealing with a naughty child. The aliens were paralyzed with shock. They watched as Miller wiped the blood on his pants and continued to talk to the cat like nothing had happened. Ambassador Krell felt a wave of cold fear hit him. He turned to his team, his voice trembling. "Do you see? The humans do not fear pain. They do not fear the weapons of a predator. They have built a bond where they allow themselves to be bitten and scratched just for the fun of a game." The aliens realized that humans were not just brave, they were mentally different from any other race. They had an insane level of tolerance for violence. If they could smile while their own pets drew their blood, what would they do to an actual enemy who tried to hurt them? By the time Miller and Mittens left the room, the aliens were exhausted just from watching. They had seen a display of speed that outclassed their best soldiers and a display of toughness from a human that made no sense. They began to realize that the cat wasn't the only predator in the room. The humans were the true masters because they could take a killing machine, give it a target to hunt, and then let it bite them without even flinching. The power dynamic on the ship had shifted. The aliens no longer saw the humans as friendly neighbors. They saw them as a race that lived in a constant state of controlled chaos. Krell looked at the empty room and whispered, "We must never, ever go to war with these people. They play with death for a hobby." On the third night of the diplomatic mission, the peaceful hum of the ship was suddenly broken by a piercing, high-pitched alarm. This wasn't a drill, and it wasn't a false alarm caused by a cat. This was the biohazard breach siren. In the cargo bay, a storage crate from the alien ambassador's home planet had cracked open. Out crawled a Xandarian Ripper, a creature the size of a large loaf of bread, covered in metallic scales and dripping with paralytic venom. In the alien world, these creatures were the ultimate nightmare. They were fast, they could bite through thick cables, and their venom could stop a heart in seconds. The alien guards scrambled, pulling out heavy containment nets and thermal scanners, their faces pale with genuine terror. They knew that if the Ripper reached the ventilation system, the entire ship would be in danger. Ambassador Krell and his team watched the security monitors with bated breath. They saw their elite guards cornering the Ripper in a narrow corridor, but the creature was too agile. It leapt from wall to wall, dodging the heavy nets with ease. It hissed, a sound like grinding metal, and prepared to lung at the lead guard's neck. The aliens were about to call for a total ship lockdown, which would have ended the mission in failure. But then, the monitor showed a familiar figure walking calmly toward the chaos. It was Commander Miller. He wasn't wearing armor, and he wasn't carrying a plasma rifle. In his arms, he held the orange ball of fur, Mittens. "Step aside, boys," Miller said to the shaking alien guards. "You're doing this the hard way." The aliens watched in disbelief as Miller simply set the cat down on the cold metal floor. For a moment, nothing happened. The Xandarian Ripper, sensing a new presence, turned its glowing red eyes toward the cat. It arched its back and let out a terrifying screech, revealing rows of venomous teeth. To the aliens, the Ripper was a monster. To the cat, it was just a very loud, very strange-smelling toy. Mittens didn't hiss back. She didn't growl. She simply sat down and began to lick her paw, looking completely bored. The aliens thought the cat was stupid, they thought it didn't realize it was about to die, but then, the Ripper made its move. It launched itself through the air like a silver bullet, straight for the cat's throat. In that microsecond, the sweet pet vanished. The transformation was so fast that the alien sensor skipped a frame of video. Mittens didn't run, she moved with a precision that was cold and calculated. She batted the Ripper out of the air with a single, lightning-fast paw strike. The sound of her claws hitting the Ripper's scales was like a hammer hitting a nail. The creature slammed into the wall, stunned. Before it could recover, Mittens was on top of it. There was no playing this time. This was the Predator Awakens moment the aliens watched, frozen in a mix of horror and fascination. They saw the cat use its weight to pin the Ripper down. The Ripper tried to bite, but Mittens moved her head with incredible reflexes, dodging the venomous fangs by millimeters. Then, with a single, clean bite to the back of the Ripper's neck, the exact spot where the spinal cord met the brain, the struggle ended. The invincible Xandarian Ripper went limp. It was over in less than 5 seconds. A creature that could kill an entire alien squad had been neutralized by a pet that the humans fed out of a tin can. The silence in the observation room was deafening. Ambassador Krell watched as Mittens picked up the dead Ripper in her mouth. She didn't eat it. She didn't growl. Instead, she walked over to the terrified alien guards and dropped the dead monster at their feet. She looked up at them, let out a soft meow, and began to purr. Commander Miller walked over, picked up the cat, and scratched her behind the ears. "Good girl, Mittens," he said calmly. "Thanks for cleaning up the trash." He then looked at the guards and added, "You guys should really secure your luggage better." This could have been messy. Krell felt his knees go weak. He realized that the gift the cat had left at the guard's feet wasn't just a dead pest. In the language of predators, it was a message. The cat was showing the aliens that she was the superior hunter. But more importantly, the aliens realized that humans didn't need high-tech sensors or venomous fangs to rule the stars. They had the ultimate biological weapon sitting on their laps, purring. The ambassadors looked at each other, and for the first time, they truly understood the phrase, humanity fuck yeah. If humans could turn a monster into a friend, and that friend could kill their worst nightmares for fun, then the galaxy was a much more dangerous place than they had ever imagined. The atmosphere in the meeting room was thick with a new kind of tension. Ambassador Krell sat across from Commander Miller, his extra hands nervously tapping the table. After witnessing Mittens kill the Xandarian Ripper so easily, the aliens were no longer just curious, they were deeply unsettled. They had spent thousands of years studying evolution and biology across the stars, and everything they knew told them that a predator like a cat should be kept in a cage, not in a bedroom. Krell leaned forward, his voice a whisper of fear. "Commander," he began, "we have checked our records. No other species in the known universe does this. Why do you keep a Class S predator in your living space? Did your ancestors use mind control technology to break its spirit?" Commander Miller leaned back and let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. He looked down at Mittens, who was currently sitting on the table, casually licking her paw as if the fate of the galaxy didn't matter at all. "No technology, Krell," Miller said. "In fact, we didn't even tame them. About 10,000 years ago, back when we were just starting to build farms, these guys just showed up." The aliens looked at each other in total disbelief. The idea that a lethal predator would choose to live with a weaker species for companionship was logically impossible to them. Krell pulled up a holographic image of a much larger creature, a Bengal tiger. "Our deep scans of your planet's history show these," Krell said, his voice trembling. "They share 95% of the same DNA as your Mittens. They are giant, orange-striped killing machines that can take down a buffalo." You are telling us that you keep the small version of a monster in your house because it decided to be your friend? The aliens realized that humans didn't just have one type of predator, they lived on a planet filled with them. Miller nodded, his expression becoming more serious. That's exactly right. We call it coevolution. We grew up together. To you, she is a Class S predator. To us, she is family. We have stories of cats saving their human owners from house fires, or even fighting off larger animals to protect a human baby. It's not about who is stronger, it's about the bond. The aliens were silent. They started to realize that the human definition of family was much wider and more dangerous than their own. In the Galactic Union, family was only your own kind. To humans, family could be anything they decided to love. As they watched, Mittens stopped cleaning herself and looked directly at Ambassador Krell. She did something very strange. She slowly closed her eyes and then opened them again in a slow, calm blink. The alien guards jumped back, thinking it was a targeting blink for an attack. But Miller smiled. Relax, guys. That's a slow blink. In cat language, that means she trusts you. She's telling you that she won't kill you because you're with me. Krell felt a cold shiver. The idea that his life depended on the mercy of a tiny, furry monster was terrifying. It meant the cat was smart enough to understand politics and social hierarchies. The suspense deepened as Krell realized the true HFY element of the situation. It wasn't just that humans were strong, it was that they were the ultimate diplomats. They had successfully negotiated a peace treaty with a creature that lived to kill. If humans could make a deal with a predator like a cat, what else could they do? Krell looked at the data on his screen and realized that humans were the only race that didn't see the universe as us versus them. They saw the universe as us and our monsters. This made them the most unpredictable force in the galaxy. They weren't just soldiers, they were predator masters. By the end of the meeting, the aliens were looking at the human race with a new kind of respect that bordered on pure terror. They understood now that attacking a human meant attacking everything the human loved, and humans loved some very dangerous things. Krell updated his secret report to the Galactic High Command. His new note read, "Humans do not fear the dark because they are friends with the things that live in it. If we ever go to war with Earth, we will not just be fighting humans. We will be fighting every predator they have ever befriended over the last 10,000 years. We are not ready for that kind of war." The time had finally come for the alien ambassadors to leave the human ship and return to their own galaxy. As their small shuttle detached from the Explorer, a heavy silence filled the cabin. Ambassador Krell sat at the window, watching the human ship grow smaller and smaller against the backdrop of 1,000 stars. In his 4 hands, he held the tablet that contained his final report. His heart was still beating faster than normal. He had spent 3 days among the humans, and he felt like he had aged 100 years. His guards were already busy cleaning their weapons, but their eyes kept darting to the corners of the room, still half expecting an orange shadow to jump out of the vents. They were safe now, thousands of miles away from Mittens, but the fear had changed them forever. Krell began to type the final section of his report, and he knew his words would shock the Galactic High Command. He didn't write about the humans' engines or their plasma shields. Instead, he wrote about the domesticated chaos he had witnessed. He explained to the High Command that the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their technology, but their lack of fear. He described how Commander Miller had laughed while a Class S predator drew blood from his hand. He described the slow blink and the purr, calling them the most effective psychological weapons in the universe. "Humans do not conquer worlds with fire," Krell wrote. "They conquer them by making the monsters love them. And once a monster loves a human, it will kill anything that stands in its way to protect them." The suspense in the alien ship grew as Krell added a secret video file to the report. It was the footage of Mittens killing the Xandarian Ripper. He knew the High Command would watch it in slow motion, over and over again. They would see the speed, the claws, and the cold, golden eyes of the cat. But more importantly, they would see the human's reaction. They would see Commander Miller picking up the killer and kissing its head. Krell wanted his leaders to understand one thing: if you ever decide to attack a human colony, you aren't just fighting soldiers. You are fighting an entire ecosystem of predators that have been trained for 10,000 years to protect their tall, hairless friends. As the alien shuttle entered the jump gate to head back to the galactic capital, Krell looked at his final sentence. He wanted it to be a warning that would last for centuries. He typed, "The human race is the galaxy's greatest anomaly. They are a species that finds the most lethal killers cute. They invite death into their beds and call it family. My recommendation is simple: treat the humans with the highest respect. Never threaten their homes, and most importantly, never, ever touch their tiny tigers. For if you make a human cry, you will have to answer to the monsters that love them." He pressed the send button, and the report vanished into the deep space network. Back on the Explorer, the ship was quiet and peaceful. Commander Miller was finally off duty, lying in his bunk and reading a digital book. The lights were low, and the hum of the ship's engines was like a lullaby. At the foot of his bed, Mittens was curled into a tight, soft circle. Her ears twitched occasionally as she dreamed of hunting silver rats in metal corridors. She looked completely harmless, like a small ball of orange silk. But as the alien shuttle disappeared into the distance, Mittens opened one eye. The golden orb caught the dim light of the cabin, glowing with an ancient, predatory intelligence. She looked toward the window, as if she knew the aliens were gone, and then she let out a long, satisfied purr. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The story of the pet predators spread like wildfire through every alien star system. Soon, every alien child was told stories about the humans and their furred shadows. The humans became known as the keepers of the beasts, and Earth was designated as a protected alpha world. Peace was maintained not because of treaties or trade, but because no alien general was brave enough to face a human and his cat. The mission was a success, and as Mittens fell back into a deep sleep, the humans continued their journey through the stars, blissfully unaware that they were now the most feared and respected species in the entire universe, all because they decided to keep a little bit of the jungle in their living room.